Welcome everyone to our final meeting of the 2024-2025 academic year. Thank you all for coming. We are excited to provide some updates and really excited to hear from Sarah Masters about some work that she did this semester with the Energy Transition Initiative. But first, I'm going to start off by talking about the minutes from the last meeting and hoping that folks have had a chance to have a look at them. And I would be happy if there's no discussion about corrections, if everyone be willing to move forward with entertaining a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you, Alex. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Awesome, thank you, Max. All right, so they are approved. As always, though, that is not necessarily the end of the road. If you find things later, please reach out and look back through and see if there are things that we need to follow up on, which we absolutely can. So I'll just start off by reiterating my welcome. Hope everybody had a good commencement weekend and has had a great first 2 days of summer. It's exciting to have the summer in front of us to get caught up on some of the things that we couldn't get done during the chaos of the semester. Congratulations to those of you who graduated, who I think might just be Sarah, but thank you to all of our student members. So we have Victoria and Ellie and Max. On the undergraduate side, thank you for your service this year. We're excited to engage soon to figure out who will be with us next year and hope that you all will be back if you choose to. I think it's been a good year as far as connecting with undergraduate activities, and we can hopefully talk a little earlier this year about being sure that we have all those lines of communication open, but it felt really positive this year. So thank you all very much. And thank you especially to RESBC and to Max here as representing them for another great year of collaboration. We're super excited to have, with Cindy Shea's retirement, to have had Melanie move into the advisor role. She will do a fantastic job, I know, and I think that's really important for all of us to have those great direct connections. Also on the student side, thank you to Ileana Fenwick, who has served for many years as the graduate student representative and has done amazing things, including standing up the Campus Resilience Committee, which we will continue on as she is now going to focus on her studies and finishing up her PhD. So incredibly grateful to Ileana. Unfortunately, she had a conflict today, but we thank her for all the great things she did and for her great work on the council. So just some updates on things that have gone on since our last meeting. I want to mention, even though I know everyone's aware, that the campus withdrew its application for an emissions permit modification to test, combust a new kind of pellet that potentially could have been a replacement for coal. During the process of the permit review and throughout the consideration by the university, other information emerged that just made it not a great choice. And so Energy Services chose to withdraw the permit modification request, and we are moving on from here. In a great segue, as it turned out, I didn't organize my notes on purpose this way, but after we went through that permit modification request, the situation emerged for an energy study led by Energy Services, supported by the North Carolina Collaboratory, and that process is underway and has actually resulted in the selection of an outside consultant, Salas O'Brien. And there are, I think, all signs that this is going to be a great wide-ranging look at our energy future. So within that will be how, as we say in our climate action plan, how do we get away from coal? How do we sustain the resilience and the reliability of our system for the labs, for the hospital, for all of the rest of campus, and do it in a way moving towards modern energy sources. So for sure, Melanie Elliott will be a part of that process with Energy Services, which is really exciting. And we look forward to, I believe they have a kickoff meeting in June. And here we look forward to hearing more about that. So we'll provide updates to the council, but for sure, reach out if you have questions as that's moving forward. Going back to the topic of the Organization of Sustainable Carolina, and having mentioned Cindy Shea's retirement, and thank you to all of you who could come to the great event we had for her to say farewell and wish her well in her new adventures. Following her retirement, we're taking the opportunity to think about Sustainable Carolina and think about the skills, the expertise, the knowledge that we have, and we're in the process of considering modest reorganization, which we think is really an exciting opportunity to shape ourselves around the issues that we're facing today. So there'll be more on that soon. All of it, of course, is contingent on the HR and financial processes at the university, which I think we all know are somewhat complicated at this point, for sure. We talked at the last meeting. Cindy gave a great presentation about the ASHE certification process and alluded to the likely outcome of ASHE Gold. That ended up being the result. So we're very happy with that. Hopefully some of you saw the materials that Abigail put out celebrating that designation. And then also importantly, we use it as a way to look at the thing, use a big assessment like that. That's a giant amount of effort to look at the things we're doing really well and the things maybe we aren't doing as well, and look for opportunities to improve our function as a sustainability group, which is, I think, as or more important than our designation by outside organizations. But we're excited about that. Just wrapped up Earth Month. Thank you to the Sustainable Carolina team for doing an amazing job. We had lots of great events, including the festival on the Green Roof. Earlier on in the month, we had a repair fair that was a joint event with Beam and really opened some opportunities for future events, trying to help folks repair things they have rather than replacing them. We excitingly hosted the Collegiate Drone Racing Championship at Harris-Williams Airport. Susan Cohen's group was instrumental in that. Something different, something exciting and fun, and by all accounts, it went really, really well. And then, of course, this is just a sampling, but the Undergraduate Research Sustainability Award, which I believe is in its third year maybe, was really successful again, with tons of amazing research being done and an exciting chance for our group to help out in elevating undergraduate student research, especially around sustainability. And that's, a subset of what we did, and they're a small subset of what went on campus in general. They're amazing events led by other groups. One thing I think that's super helpful that Abigail had was a calendar of Earth Month events so that you could see the whole and not have to go to individual organizations to find each of the events. But it felt as though it was a great month, and that there may be opportunities for additional ways to organize and do even more. So reach out if you have ideas, and we will be in touch with groups as we continue to try and help coordinate and facilitate and then do a handful of stuff on our own. So, and we're also already planning for next year. Next year's research symposium is going to be really focused on individual issues and hopefully tackling issues that are within the expertise of faculty, students, and staff who in the past have given technical presentations that ended with a 5-minute segment at the end about how their work may be applicable to the university. Instead, we're going to look at specific issues like food and perhaps tackle ideas around, how do we think about making our food more sustainable outside of perhaps the conventional programs that are available to help us designate those things. Or maybe we look again back at the energy transition and have someone like Council Member Noah Kittner give a talk or lead a group, or who knows. We're working on the details, but the idea is that it's going to be a lot more specifically topically focused and bring in a range of research from faculty to undergraduate research, hopefully in little pods. So if you have any ideas, definitely reach out, and we'll be in touch to run ideas by people in the near term, just to be sure we're on the right track. So my final update is about the Inflation Reduction Act. We've talked a lot about this. I think everyone knows that we're an instrumentality of the state, the university is, and without work done at the university by our tax office, we would not have been able to participate in the IRA. So it's exciting that we can. It's also really exciting that the early news is that we will be filing next year to take advantage of some direct pay credits through the IRA. There's an ad hoc working group that Ben Davidson has been leading that's brought together people from across the university with different perspectives and different lenses on either energy or sustainability or just the idea of the university's taxes. And I think this group is really well positioned to provide future input to activities around this space. So we're excited to see, hopefully next year, have a successful filing of our taxes that will allow some participation in the IRA and then future integration with new projects coming online, existing projects that may be able to benefit from things that they hadn't thought about, and trying to do a little bit better job of having that loop closed. And I think that's been the case since that group has been meeting, and hopefully that will continue to be the case. All right, so that's what I've got. Does anybody have any questions? All right, fantastic. As always, reach out if something comes up. Happy to chat. So now, next, we are very excited that Sarah Masters is here with us today, who just graduated. And during the semester was working with Alex Hopkins in the Energy Transition Initiative, thinking about the IRA and thinking about how other universities had succeeded, were approaching it, just doing a great scan of a lot of the other places that are perhaps looking at things differently than we are, or perhaps a little bit farther along, and being sure that we avail ourselves of all the opportunities we can to be as up to date as we can in trying to participate in this important potential source of revenue for sustainability related activities. And with that, I'd be happy to turn it over to Sarah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction, Mike, and thank you everyone for being here. I'll go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this. Amazing. Okay, so like Mike said, I will be presenting today on leveraging clean energy tax credits for higher education. And this research I performed was through the Energy Transition Initiative with Alex, which is under the Institute for the Environment. So a little bit more about me. I am a graduated senior now from UNC. I majored in environmental science and I minored in data science and PPE, which stands for philosophy, politics, and economics. And I started interning with the ETI my senior year. So I started in the fall, and it's been an amazing experience with Alex, who heads the ETI. I guess the image didn't load, sorry, Alex, but Alex is on the Zoom, so you can see what he looks like here. And while Alex has many state energy focus areas, and I did some smaller research on a lot of those areas, his main interest for me after we discussed was going to be sort of understanding the IRA more and having some in-depth research done on that. So I can hand it over to Alex for a brief moment to talk about this interest in the IRA and how he saw that being implicated onto his own areas of focus.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I'll be very quick because I am not the main attraction, as evidenced by my picture being a blank screen. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so Sarah did some great work on the margins of this IRA report, looking at the impact of data centers on electricity demand in North Carolina, in the Southeast. She looked at stuff that Duke Energy is submitting in their carbon plan docket at the Utilities Commission. There's a wide range of work she did, but this kind of provided a core kind of long-term research opportunity for her to dig into. And the reason why is kind of evidence in kind of what Mike said at the beginning. It's something that the university is looking at. There's an ad hoc group digging into this. And we thought that given the importance of the Inflation Reduction Act since its passage back in August of 2022 on all sorts of energy transition policy discussions in North Carolina, in the region that I work on in the Southeast, and really across the country, that it would be a nice kind of merging of her interests in sustainability efforts and my ongoing policy research to look at the IRA through a different lens. How does it impact the university community? What are the lessons learned already, if there are any? And there were, and the report highlights them, just to kind of give a different spin on it. So I was really, I'll just say this because I'm going to pass it back to Sarah very soon, but I was just really privileged to work with Sarah over 2 months. I'm really just proud of the work she's done in this project and the other research endeavors she's been involved in. But yeah, so congrats to Sarah on graduation. And with that, let me toss it back to you so you can kind of dig into what you found.
Totally. And just wanted to give my gratitude to everyone here for helping me get to the opportunities I did at UNC and getting to research things as impactful as this huge bill and getting to share it back with you. It's been so rewarding. But moving on to when we figured out we wanted to focus on the IRA, what were some of the things we kind of wanted to focus on in the very beginning? We had 4 main research questions. So kind of like Alex was saying, we really did frame this research around the IRA being just another stepping stone in the climate journey of our state and universities and the nation. So I did do a brief scan of what sustainability and climate targets already exist in our state and the UNC system, because the IRA is really going to be helping universities pursue climate goals that a lot of them already had. And then I also did what we called phase 1 of my research, which was just preliminary desk research. So I was kind of scouring the internet for webinars, articles, interviews, anything I could find about universities in particular utilizing the IRA, which was kind of hard because when people think of the IRA, I feel like we think of companies using them, using these tax credits. But we'll talk about later how the IRA opened it up to universities being able to use these credits. So I found some initial information, and then we decided to really dig further and actually reach out to a lot of the people I was seeing online talking about this, and to contacts in the sustainability realm in North Carolina that we already had within the university to actually interview people about their engagement with the IRA, how it started, their successes, challenges, and lessons learned. And we really were reaching out to administrations that we already knew were pursuing these tax credits or already had, so that we could be kind of getting expertise from them to put in this report where a university who has never even heard of the IRA could look at this and say, okay, this is how I can start to think about it, and some helpful resources to help us get started. So then that last research question was, what are the common best practices and considerations that these interviews and my preliminary desk research brought up? So I am grateful to have a lot of time here with you guys today. So I'm really going to go through the main headings of the report now, but I encourage you guys to, once it's published on the ETI website, really dig in further. But so starting off with those climate sustainability goals across North Carolina, I was really intrigued to learn about the UNC sustainability policy, and this is actually UNC system-wide, not just UNC Chapel Hill. And it's funny that in my 4 years here, being involved in clubs like RESPC, I never knew about this, but it was adopted in 2009 by the university's Board of Governors, and it requires universities to appoint a chief sustainability officer and create a plan to be carbon neutral by 2050. So when I was researching UNC system sustainability goals, I saw a lot of the same language being used, and it was directly from this sustainability policy for the system that was adopted in 2009. And then we wanted to highlight 2 executive orders by Roy Cooper, Executive Order 80 and 246, which mandated the state to have these emission reductions goals and increase the number of zero emissions vehicles. EO 246 made it by 2030 and increased that number for both of those goals, and also stated that our state will achieve net zero by 2050 and also have 50% of in-state sales of new vehicles be zero emissions by 2030. And then the last big statute we wanted to highlight was this bipartisan agreement, HB 951, which, as many of you know, requires Duke Energy to reduce carbon emissions by 70% from 2005 levels by 2030 and to achieve net zero by 2050. And HB 951 really shows that while universities and the state focus on their own climate initiatives, the electricity grid itself is also transitioning to cleaner energy sources. Um, and then this is in the appendix, but I also made a table of all of the UNC system schools that I could find that had future climate goals. And the takeaway here is really just that our universities are very committed to a clean energy future and have been even before the IRA was passed. But policies like the IRA can really offer provisions that just help financially support several of these pre-existing strategies. So, moving into what the IRA actually is and its actual passage, it was signed into law in August of 2022, and it contains $369 billion in new spending and tax breaks for clean energy. So, it's the largest investment in clean energy and climate action in our nation's history, which is why it's so important. And we really wanted to take a deeper look at it. And I made these four tables which are in the report. They're kind of chaotic, so I'm not going to go into all the details of them, but I really wanted to cleanly organize how these tax credits work because there's a lot of complications. There's base tax credits, and then there's stackable credits, which can make the credits be really high percentages of your initial investment into a clean energy facility. But these are the main ones for higher education in 2025. So, very briefly, the investment tax credit applies to the initial investment that an entity makes into any facility that generates clean electricity. It became this tech neutral credit in 2025. Before 2025, it was only available for specific clean energy technologies, but now it's for any clean electricity technology. So there's a 6% base to it. And then if you meet other requirements, you can add on 30% or an additional 20% for things like having certain wages, being in certain communities that were already brownfields or a coal community in the past, and for using domestic content in the project. And then very similarly, we have the production tax credit, which instead of being based on the initial investment is based on the actual megawatt hours that the clean electricity facility generates. And then there are things like the clean commercial vehicle credit and the alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit, which incentivize EVs and EV charging infrastructure. So the IRA is really widespread in all of the technologies that it incentivizes with really high incentives in the tax credits. So you might be wondering, tax credits. Well, UNC is a public university. We don't really have a super high tax liability. But what the IRA was really monumental in doing was adding in this direct pay provision, which is called elected pay in the legislation. So while the investment tax credit and the production tax credit actually predated the IRA, they've never been available to tax exempt or low tax liable entities. But the IRA included this provision which allows entities to, instead of receiving a tax credit, receive a direct payment of the amount it would have been if the entity had a high tax liability. So for the ITC, it would just be that straight percentage of the investment into the clean electricity technology. And so this really opens the door to entities like universities and nonprofits to receive benefits from the IRA. And important to note, as Mike said earlier, Carolina experts like Ben Davidson actually played a pivotal role in ensuring that instrumentalities of the state, like UNC, were eligible to be included in direct pay. So it's really cool to see, as a student of UNC, that we're already at the cutting edge of even shaping this legislation and already thinking about using it and researching it. And then one more thing that we included in the report that we have to mention before we go any further is that the future of the IRA is definitely a little bit uncertain, with shifting political dynamics, legal challenges, and potential policy rollbacks. There's also thin margins in the House of Representatives and competing congressional priorities. We may see some of these provisions be removed or the IRA even be repealed. And we didn't include speculations about which of these things are going to happen, but you can find articles on there online to dig deeper into this. But Alex and I actually were like trying to wait it out to see if we could include anything that was a little bit more certain than this in the report so it could be more relevant. But we just haven't seen any major changes yet where we can confidently say anything else besides it's uncertain. So we've included that in the report, but we still thought that this research was timely and captures an important moment in the US climate legislation history. And universities are using it, businesses are using it, and we wanted to hear what they have to say about it. Although the future is definitely a little bit uncertain, as with many things right now. But digging into some of the key findings that I actually found. So, in my initial desk research, these are some of the main findings I found. The first one was, like I was saying earlier, direct pay and these clean energy tax credits. A lot of people online in their webinars were saying this is just an accelerator for existing climate goals that their university already had. Um, it's just with having, 30, 40, 50% off of your initial investment, that's just really boosting a project's rate of investment, ROI, which makes projects be able to be implemented at an accelerated pace, makes it easier to pitch to your university. So it's really helping existing goals be achieved in a quicker and more efficient way. Also, without a doubt, the number one tax credit in the IRA, since there are so many that I heard being utilized by universities, was the investment tax credit. And this is because this credit comes into play at the very beginning of the project's um, initiation because it's based on that initial investment in dollars. Whereas things like the production tax credit, you would have to have statistics on how much energy the facility is going to produce and receive the credit after it's produced. So the ITC definitely was the one that everyone was talking about the most. Another thing, like I mentioned earlier, there's so many opportunities for stacking with these credits, which people mentioned as a huge success in their engagement with the IRA. Whereas a lot of grants and other financial funding mechanisms in the past are just cut and dry, the IRA has a lot of flexibility to achieve from 6 all the way to like 50 or even higher percent off of an investment with things like the low income communities bonus credit and other stackers. And then as for barriers to execution with the IRA, the main one that I heard in my preliminary desk research was timing, because as it is still a tax credit, um, you have to wait until the end of the tax year to actually receive your reimbursement for your investment. So interestingly, there's this period where you have to front the money in the meantime, which can definitely pose a barrier to many administrations, especially if they have less resources to just have this sum of money that they can put up in the meantime. And then one of the most important takeaways that I had heard in my research was that um, collaboration was the number one key factor in being able to successfully engage with the IRA because you need finance, sustainability, energy, facilities, design, basically almost all the teams within a university because this is a tax law at the end of the day, but also involves reaching sustainability goals and then also involves building new things on campus, which involves design. So it was really interesting to hear people say that completely new partnerships were being created in this engagement with the IRA, which is super cool because new people are talking and sharing findings to be able to all collaborate and efficiently file for these tax credits. All right, and then before I move into the interviews with the actual experts, I felt that I couldn't not include the students' perspective in this whole story. So a lot of these students are on this call, or I'm sure you guys know, but something interesting that Alex and I discussed is while we were interviewing the administrators, we would ask them, what are you doing with your students on this issue? Like, are they engaged on this issue also? And a lot of people would say, our students know what the IRA is, but we're not really talking with them about it. They're not really talking to us about it. It's kind of more of this issue just within the administration. But I thought it was interesting because I feel like, from my perspective at UNC, our students are super informed on the IRA, very engaged with it. And I've been on so many calls with our students and our administration and staff and faculty, asking questions, understanding where our university is at with it, understanding what we can be doing to be helping engage on it. And so I was really excited to include some interviews from these three students' perspective about what they understand about the IRA and their perception on it. So Max is on the call. He is a junior but a rising senior at UNC, co-chair of RSPC, and I really liked his quote about just how this has been one of the single most exciting pieces of legislation in his lifetime. And he talked about how in Greg Ganji's ENEC 201 class, Environment and Society, the day the IRA was passed, the whole class was cheering and celebrating its passage. So I think it's really cool that UNC students are extremely informed about the IRA and are ready to be engaged, help the university. I know RESPC and the administration are very engaged in conversations about how RESPC can be a potential partner in the IRA. And then I also interviewed Maya, who just received her PhD, and Victoria, who is a junior who will be a rising senior at UNC, and they both shared super valuable perspectives about how they are excited to see what UNC can do on this issue. And I think it just goes to show for any audience of this report that students are wanting to be partners, wanting to be engaged, and are very climate literate already and know about this legislation and are learning about it in their classes. So this was a really exciting part of the report for me. But moving into the actual experts, we spoke with 6 universities across the nation about their journey exploring the IRA. And it was definitely my favorite part of this research, the interviews with the administrators and the students, because I love talking with somebody face to face, but it was on Zoom, but still face to face, and really hearing their stories and documenting them. So first, we spoke with Noah Upchurch, who many of you may be familiar with. He is a UNC alum. He was in RSPC and actively engaged in many sustainability channels at UNC, but he's now the sustainability director at Catawba College. And so this was the only private college we interviewed. And the reason that I included this interview in this research is because Noah is really leading IRA engagement at Catawba and therefore had a plethora of helpful resources to share, such as emails, phone numbers, organizations to reach out to that they personally used in helping them utilize the IRA. And he also had a lot of really cool things to say about how they're making the pitch to use donor money for these sustainability initiatives with the IRA. And then we interviewed Carla Davis right down the road at NC State, who is also director of sustainability. We already had this contact previously, thanks to Cindy, actually. So it was great to be able to immediately reach out to Carla and hear about NC State's journey. They are actively pursuing solar tax credits, and Carla also shared a really helpful graphic that I encourage you guys to dig into the report and look at about a step-by-step journey of which stakeholders need to be involved at which steps of engagement with the tax credit, and some other really helpful technical resources from the state about how they can help a university really with technical expertise with the tax law of everything going on. Then I got to talk to someone from the University of California system, Sam. He's the Associate Director of Renewable Energy for the University of California's Office of the President. And as we know, California as a state is definitely usually at the cutting edge of climate policy and climate issues, and that was definitely the case in this interview. The whole system already has a net zero goal that they have calculated exactly how much money it will take to get to, and they've calculated how much of that money the IRA is going to provide for them. They have calculators that can help each of their campuses calculate with a certain project, how much money a certain credit from the IRA can help them with. So really, again, encourage you guys to go and take a look at his interview. It was really great. And then within California also, I talked to Lindsay Rowell, who is Chief of Energy, Sustainability, and Transportation at California State University Systems Chancellor's Office. So this is another system of universities in California. It's actually the biggest university system in the nation, which I had no idea about. And Lindsay was super great. She was really transparent with Alex and I about they're experiencing a lot of issues with IRA engagement because they don't have as many financial resources as other systems do. And it's really hard for them to like think about filing for these tax credits as a system of universities and fronting the money for all of them. She was also on a panel at the White House with Jigar Shah talking to them about how we can provide more helpful resources for university systems and universities because they were experiencing a lot of challenges and they're still pursuing a few projects, but I thought it was really insightful to, while a lot of interviews focused on a lot of successes, also know where a lot of these pain points with the legislation are. And Lindsay's really trying actively to engage with other universities to increase communication on this issue and, like this report is doing, share learnings to help all of us have an even more seamless engagement with the IRA. And then second to last, talk to Dennis Carlberg, also a contact that Cindy provided, who is Chief Sustainability Officer at Boston University. And similar to Sam's interview, it was apparent that BU is really on the cutting edge of sustainability initiatives. They built a geothermal building in the heart of Boston and already had super rigorous climate goals before the IRA was passed. But Dennis talked about how the IRA is definitely helping them accelerate these goals and push out these projects even quicker than they might have before. And then lastly, I was super happy to bring this research home and talk to V, who is our Director of Energy Management, and also interim executive director of, I think, energy services. So sorry, I forgot to update the interim title. Feel free to correct me, but V has a super widespread view of energy initiatives at UNC because he holds these two roles. If anyone has tried to talk to him, you know his calendar is super busy, but I was really grateful that he took the time to talk to me about how UNC is actually, like Mike mentioned, already pursuing IRA tax credits for a building on Keenan Flagler's campus that is being built. They're going to put solar on the building and they're looking at using the ITC. In V's interview, he talks about how our university has help from consultants and who's engaged with this and what the successes and challenges have been throughout this process. And V's own perspective on putting solar on this building. So I was really happy to bring this research home and talk to this widespread assembly of all these different administrators. They all had really different stories and perspectives. So again, really encourage you guys to dig further into the report. And then I have two more slides. I know I've been talking a lot, but some key findings from these interviews, not going to dig into each of them, but just in summary, discovered a lot of benefits that everybody was talking about how these tax credits were benefiting their university. So like I said, it's just major savings with the sheer percentage of project investment that you can get off with these bonus credits. Also leading the climate narrative of the university's state and becoming visible parts of the state and local clean energy story. And then something really interesting that a lot of people talked about was fueling future innovation and how, while it's a challenge that the tax credit comes back at the end of the tax year, this provides an opportunity for if a university wants to say, okay, when that money comes back, it has to just go back to more clean energy projects instead of simply just reimbursing that initial project. This can create a really impactful regenerative clean energy fund. And then inspiring the next generation, Lindsay in particular, but a lot of administrators talked about how they are pitching IRA engagement and sustainability initiatives as an investment in the campus's future because prospective applicants these days are really looking for universities that are really advanced on their sustainability journeys, offering classes in sustainability, but also the university themselves being having sustainability goals and achieving them. And I included some studies that show this research. And then lastly, the pure sustainability aspect of all of this. These tax credits can allow universities to further their climate goals and reduce emissions more than they ever could before. And then lastly, these are some more technical best practices for implementation. I won't go super in depth to all of them because I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but like I was already saying, finding your pitch to your administration, there's so many benefits. So the ones we just looked at, finding a way for the university to make sure they are pitching this in a way that will be effective to all the different teams that have to come together who aren't necessarily all motivated necessarily by reducing carbon emissions purely. And then creating that working group of motivated leaders from all of those groups. And then something that I was interested to realize was that everyone I talked to really had tax experts helping them, whether they were internal or external, because it seems that once you get into the weeds of the IRA, this is not something that is really easy to navigate with filing with the IRS. So that was something that it was important to note before a university dives in. And then another thing that was really interesting to learn was that people a lot of the time are looking at their deferred maintenance log, which most universities have, for projects that are already planned, but that could be dovetailed with the IRA as an energy project is a great place to start if a university doesn't want to plan a completely new project. Having a plan for fronting the money while waiting for that reimbursement, as well as a plan for funds when they come back on the back end, is really important. And then engaging students whenever possible, both to create a healthy pressure on the administration and also to have a partner having extra hands when needed. And then lastly, like this report is doing, documenting your process. A lot of the webinars I was watching said to reach out to them if anybody has any updates on anything they said or wants to engage on helping each other out with this process. This is all new. Universities have never been able to access credits like this before. So the more information we put out there, the better. And with that, I also included a table with helpful websites and emails and institutes that people mentioned helped them in their journey. And that is it from me. The report will be published soon on the ETI's website, and I would love if you guys took a look at it, but this really covered a lot of the main themes of it. So if anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to talk about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was awesome. So this is one time where I think it's amazing that we're on Zoom because we have a recording of your fantastic talk that we can push out to the whole world to see all the great stuff that you've done, Alex. Thank you for your leadership in this area. It's what we hope for. It's a timely look at something we're trying to avail ourselves of and a really exciting resource. Do we have any questions for Sarah? Oh, I've got my chat thing open, so I won't see your hands. So I have a question, and I guess it's going to be a little bit of a comment rolled into a question, but it does seem as though private universities and universities in, say, California and Massachusetts tend to be most likely to be at the forefront. In your work, did you find, whether you interviewed them or not, but examples that are maybe closer to us in terms of similarly a state university in maybe a not bright red but a purple state, or did you find any examples that you would call closer to maybe UNC's peers?
For sure. That's a great question. and a great call out. I think it's important to include examples that are super far on the cutting edge, but also important to recognize that we're not necessarily in the same situation and can't achieve exactly the same results. I would say NC State is more of a similar example. Of course, it's right next to us. Um, we're in the same state, of course, and Carla was talking about how their success was really attributed to really just they had regular meetings with anybody who was interested in working on this topic, and there was just a few motivated people who really just kept pushing it forward, which sounds like we're already doing at UNC, but I'd say for situations where it's not already, California, where they have state goals that they have to meet that are really ambitious. I think when we see success is just when we have really motivated individuals and coming together of the university and students to push forward these goals. Um, yeah, I would say NC State was probably the closest example that I could find.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And to be honest, we learned from them even prior to the beginning of your research. So that's wonderful that they're included, and we can see what else they might be doing that's perhaps a little bit different or a little bit ahead of where we are.
Of
Do we have
course.
other questions for Sarah?
Yeah, I was wondering, I think that thinking and talking about the IRA right now is not always as hopeful as it was in the first couple of years it was rolled out. I'm wondering through this process of talking to universities and people who are really engaging it, where did you find hope and what do you think was like the most hopeful that you were hearing?
A great question. I found a lot of hope throughout all of the research I was doing. But I would say, like, hearing the University of California talk about how they're already budgeting to include a huge amount of their net zero costs from the IRA was really hopeful. And then let me go back to the interviews just to remind myself of everybody I talked to. Um, Yeah, I would say something else that was hopeful to hear was Lindsay. So even though they are having a lot of challenges in implementing the IRA, they themselves have a net zero goal by 2045 for their university system. So it was hopeful to hear that even if a university doesn't foresee themselves being able to utilize the IRA to its full potential, climate goals are continuing on and are still present and are still happening. And we still have a lot of motivated organizations in higher education and throughout our nation that are going to keep pushing regardless of the outcome of the uncertainty with the IRA. Um, so yeah, a lot of hope was still there. I could go on into each of these, but for the sake of time, I'll stop there.
Hi, Sarah.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey,
I have a question.
Sure.
Really exciting to finally see your research. Alex had mentioned it at Clean Tech Summit, so I was excited to learn more. Is this sort of the first time like somebody's looked at, across universities and kind of gathered what different universities are doing in terms of the IRA? Is that like a gap in the research, or had this been done with other universities prior?
That's a great question. So I don't know if you guys know of the organization called Second Nature, but they do a lot of research within higher education. And so that was like the only other main organization I saw looking at this issue. And so I attended a webinar where they were talking, it was more so about news about the IRA, and it was updating. A lot of universities were on the call, but it was really mainly to update universities on the current administration's potential changes to the IRA. And so they also do have a report on the IRA and higher education, but more so um, not interviewing anybody. It was more so just like main tax credits, what was in the tax credits, here's how to use them. And so I think where Alex and I really wanted to come in and provide value was to get more stories out of this and talking to real people who have contacts and are willing to talk about the good, the bad, and all of it, and put some life into just the raw statistics and articles that are already existed about the IRA. So great question, Abigail. Thanks.
All right, any other questions? Sarah, thank you. That was fantastic. It's an exciting thing for the ETI. It's a super exciting thing for Sustainable Carolina and the university to have this information. And hopefully it's still at a pivotal moment. We'll see how things go. But as you say, we don't know yet. So fingers crossed for all those things.
Thank you guys
Mike,
so much again.
Mike, can I jump in really briefly? Just on that
Absolutely,
point
Alex.
exactly. So Sarah and I were always aware of the keen possibility that we could publish this, and then the House Ways and Means Committee would publish their proposed budget, which would be very impactful on what we were discussing. And that literally happened yesterday afternoon. So I just wanted to flag that for everyone to let you know that if you're interested in reading more, I'm happy to circulate some articles that are percolating out from DC about what the proposals include on things like the investment tax credit, on things like direct pay, on things like 179D, which is a separate thing, but very relevant to this community here. So yeah, I just want to say again, kudos to Sarah for doing this research in an uncertain time, and lots of hope to be had to your question, Max. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We are now at the time on the agenda where we have an opportunity for any council member updates. If you have anything you'd like to share for the good of the group, please do.
Yeah, I'll just note briefly that a couple months ago, RESPC was able to present at, along with App State, their REI, which is similar to us at Duke's Southeast Sustainability Summit, Southeastern Student Sustainability Summit, which was really great. Duke did a great job presenting it, and I'm just flagging it now because it's a thing we should remember. That was a really great event. Good way for students to be engaged. I believe there were a couple of folks from different universities, sustainability organizations as well, more staff side. Really great opportunity and something that we should look for in the future once they decide what university it'll be at next year.
Absolutely. Any other updates? All right. Well, just to thank those of you who were able to make it today for making it. We knew when we scheduled it, it wasn't a perfect time for some reasons, but it was a perfect time. And then we got to hear from Sarah before she takes off to do great things in the big wide world. So thank you, everyone.
Mike, it looks like Jeff has his hand raised.
Oh, forgive me, Jeff.
Sorry, I know I don't have my camera on. Can you hear me okay?
Definitely.
We just started our global immersion elective in Portugal today, so I'm not able to get on my camera, but I'm glad you can hear me. Sarah, amazing job. Thank you for your work and your time, and congratulations on graduation. Can't wait to watch all the impact you're going to have moving forward. This is really cool. We just a quick update. We moved LIFT, launching investment for future transformation, to start this summer with coaching sessions. And then it will go all the way through to submissions being end of September. So, which is exciting because we're actually trying to align it with recruiting and finance as well. And so that's the blended finance competition we do. And we are one step away from starting the impact investing fund. So we have money. Now we're trying to find the right, which is a very small sweet spot, very specific sweet spot, I should say, the right impact investors in residence is what we're terming them, to teach the courses where students will decide what early stage, pre-seed and seed stage companies to invest in. So I just wanted to share that because we're excited about that moving forward after years of work.
That is very exciting. All right. Thank you, Jeff. And forgive me for not seeing your hand. Going to scroll back through everybody.
No worries at all.
All right. Is there anyone else? All right. Well, thank you again. Hope everyone has a great day. And we look forward to connecting again in the fall, and I'll be in touch with the undergraduate folks to think about next year's representation, and hope to see some folks coming back. And thank you one more time to Ileana. All right, everybody have a great day. Thank you again.